AMD Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X Zen 5 CPUs to receive new 105W TDP in AGESA 1.2.0.1a BIOS update. AMD's Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X CPUs based on the Zen 5 core architecture might be getting a new BIOS update that revises the TDP to 105W. AMD's 65W Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X Zen 5 inches CPUs to get new 105W SMU update through latest BIOS. The first two AMD Ryzen 9000 Zen 5 inches CPUs, the Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X, rolled out last week. These mainstream chips were targeted at the masses with 65W TDPs by default and only going up to 88W using PBO. The Ryzen 5 9600X was rated at the same TDP as the Ryzen 5 7600X, while the Ryzen 7 9700X saw a 40W TDP reduction from 105W of its predecessor down to 65W. AMD Ryzen 9 9950X and Ryzen 9 9900X now available, high-end Zen 5 with 16 cores for $649 and 12 cores for $499. Now, it looks like AMD is preparing to add a new TDP level for its 65W chips through an upcoming SMU in a BIOS update, which should increase the limit to 105W by default. The 105W TDP will apply to both chips, the Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X, marking a 62% increase over the default 65W TDP. Previously, we reported that AMD was planning to revise the TDP to 120W for the 9700X, but 105W is now been finalized. The reason behind the large TDP increase might be due to the lower than expected performance of the AMD Ryzen 7 9700X and Ryzen 5 9600X compared to their predecessors. By default, both CPUs perform very closely to their predecessors, especially in games, and only with PBO do we get to see a bigger difference. Despite being 65W chips, the Ryzen 7 9700X still yields slower gaming pref versus the 7800 by 3D, which retains its efficiency dominance as we covered in our review. Surely, users who want to retain higher efficiency can stick with the default 65W TDP mode, but those who want higher performance can resort to the new 105W TDP mode. Now we don't know how much of a performance uplift this new update will enable since we haven't tested it out ourselves, but a 62% increase in TDP is quite major, so the games would have to be nice to warrant the new limit. A 105W TDP should also mean that the chips will go up to 142W, PPT. The new TDP update will be provided in the latest AGESA 1.2.0.1 patch, a BIOS in its official and non-beta release for all AM5 motherboards.